Hey gang, welcome back. As we know it, most villains have one body and one life. But Kang the Conqueror looked at that idea and basically said, yeah, no. He was born as Nathaniel Richards in the 31st century, and he didn't become terrifying because he was naturally born with superpowers. He became terrifying because he turned insanely advanced future technology into an extension of his own body and then started rewriting his existence across time. Every journey through history had the potential to create new identities, divergent futures, and sometimes entirely separate versions of himself. So, today we'll be taking a look at the multiversal anatomy of Kang the Conqueror, his body, armor, timeline-fractured mind, and how one ordinary human somehow evolved into an entire ecosystem of conquerors.
Future human? Most people think Kang became dangerous the moment he put on the armor, but that's only half the story. The short answer is this. Take away the armor, weapons, and time machine, and Kang is still human. Nathaniel Richards was born on Earth 6311, also known as Other Earth, in the 31st century. This alternate reality diverged from Earth 616 centuries earlier and developed technology without experiencing the same historical decline. Its civilization achieved space travel and extraordinarily advanced science far earlier than the main Marvel timeline. However, that does not mean Nathaniel was naturally born with superhuman strength, durability, slowed aging, or radiation resistance. Marvel's official descriptions consistently identify Kang as a human without innate superpowers. His extraordinary physical capabilities generally come from armor, medical technology, weapons, and equipment rather than a biologically evolved 31st century body. So, comparing him with Captain America requires one major qualification. Captain America's body was permanently enhanced by the super soldier serum. Kang's body remained fundamentally human, but he grew up in a civilization with technology centuries beyond anything available to Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, or most of modern Earth. His society possessed advanced medicine, robotics, artificial intelligence, temporal science, and weapons that could make an ordinary person appear superhuman. Nathaniel also spent his life studying history, warfare, engineering, robotics, and time science. Before becoming a conqueror, he was a highly intelligent student living in a peaceful future that he found unbearably dull. Discovering time travel technology gave him the opportunity to escape that boredom and pursue the adventures and domination he believed his own era could no longer provide. His biggest natural advantage was therefore never enhanced biology, it was his brain. You could strip Kang of every piece of armor he owned and still be standing in front of a brilliant historian, engineer, strategist, and time traveler who understood centuries of human conflict. He's not physically superior because humanity had naturally evolved into a stronger species. He was dangerous because his knowledge and resources came from a civilization operating centuries ahead of the people he intended to conquer. Built by the suit. What if I told you Kang's greatest superpower was not a superpower at all? Because his real advantage was never his body. It was the technology he wrapped around it. Nathaniel Richards is not a mutant, an inhuman, or someone transformed by cosmic radiation. Most of what makes Kang appear superhuman comes from technology so advanced that it almost functions like a second anatomy rather than an ordinary suit of armor. The moment Kang steps into his battle armor, the entire combat profile changes. Its systems increase his strength, protect him from physical injury, generate force fields, provide environmental support, and give him access to weapons centuries beyond modern science. His armor has been depicted as neurokinetic, meaning that it responds to his thoughts and allows him to control any of its functionalities mentally. This does not mean the suit literally replaces his organs or permanently merges with his nervous system. It remains technology, but its responsiveness allows Kang to use it with a speed and precision that makes it feel like an extension of his body. The armor can amplify his strength enough to confront superhuman opponents who would destroy an unprotected human. It can produce energy blasts and defensive barriers, protect him from radiation and hostile environments, and connect him with additional devices, weapons, and temporal technology. Different Kang stories give the armor different capabilities, so it would be unsafe to treat every feature as permanently present in every version. Kang has repeatedly redesigned, repaired, replaced, and upgraded his equipment. That unpredictability is part of what makes fighting him such a nightmare. It's not merely a man in one cool suit, it's a time traveler who can acquire weapons from numerous historical periods and alternate futures. Comparing that with Iron Man is useful, but it shouldn't be treated as proof that Kang's technology automatically surpasses every suit Tony Stark could ever build. Tony has repeatedly created armor capable of competing with cosmic beings and future technology. The more accurate distinction is that Tony usually invents from technological foundations of his own era, while Kang can steal, study, or manufacture devices using knowledge from centuries of future development. For the Avengers, examining Kang's machinery can be like asking somebody from the medieval period to reverse engineer a smartphone. His debut in Avengers number 8 established that his force fields, weapons, time travel, and robotic soldiers operated far beyond what Earth's heroes initially understood. During the storyline commonly known as the Kang Dynasty, he combined advanced technology, military power, temporal knowledge, and careful strategy to conquer Earth. That was Kang's real anatomy. His human body started the fight. His technology allowed him to finish it. What does Kang's armor actually do to his body in combat? Kang's armor does not merely protect him, it transforms how effectively his body can fight. Once Nathaniel puts on the suit, his muscles no longer perform all the work alone. The armor's systems amplify his movement and strength, absorb or redistribute impacts, generate barriers, and protect the vulnerable human body underneath. At that point, Nathaniel Richards is not merely fighting while wearing armor. He is fighting through it. Think of the suit as a full-body mechanical enhancement rather than a costume. Every punch Kang throws can be reinforced by powered armor. Every hit he takes can be absorbed by the suit's external structure, energy systems, and force fields, rather than transferring directly to his bones and organs. Before an attack physically reaches him, a defensive barrier may stop, weaken, or redirect it. That makes conventional bullets, explosions, and mini energy attacks significantly less effective. But these defenses are not absolute. The Avengers and other opponents have repeatedly damaged his armor, broken his force field, disarmed him, and left him physically vulnerable. Kang is still a human being underneath the technology. If the suit fails, he can be injured or killed. His armor also has induced life support and environmental systems capable of protecting him in deep space, irradiated areas, alien worlds, and other hostile locations. However, broken points in the timeline are not automatically physical environments with one consistent set of survival rules. Whether Kang can survive temporal instability depends on the story, his equipment, and the nature of the anomaly. The armor can scan opponents, communicate with external systems, provide technical data, and access weapons or devices through mental commands. But Marvel has not consistently established that it predicts every enemy movement or process every battle alongside Kang's consciousness, like a separate artificial brain. The safest description is that its neurokinetic interface enables him to control the armor through thought and rapidly access its systems. Instead of responding like an ordinary human fumbling with buttons or mechanical controls, Kang can activate weapons, shields, transportation, and other functions through the suit's mental interface. That's why Kang often feels less like a man wearing armor and more like a human nervous system operating a mobile weapons platform. By the time the battle begins, the suit is not only protecting Kang, it's effectively become his mechanical second body. Broken timeline. For Kang, getting older is not as simple as waiting for another birthday. Time doesn't treat him the way it treats people who live their lives in one continuous historical period. However, Marvel has not firmly established that humans from Kang's era naturally age dramatically more slowly or possess special biology that keeps them permanently young. Nathaniel's unusual lifespan and inconsistent age are primarily consequences of time travel, advanced medicine, temporal manipulation, divergent cells, and different periods of his personal history. Unlike Wolverine, Kang does not possess a natural healing factor that continuously reverses aging. He survives through technology, medicine, armor, and control over where, and sometimes when, he lives. Now, add time travel to the situation and things go completely off the rails. Kang does not experience life in one straightforward line from the perspective of Earth 616. He might spend years conquering a distant future, travel back thousands of years to ancient Egypt, leave that period, establish another empire in a different century, and then return to confront the Avengers shortly after his previous appearance from their perspective. His body ages according to the time he personally experiences. It doesn't automatically age according to every year passing in every era he visits. This is why Kang can possess decades or even centuries of accumulated knowledge without appearing as old as a person who has lived through the same amount of time continuously under ordinary circumstances. Advanced medicine, rejuvenation technology, replacement equipment, and temporal travel can further complicate that process. Even stranger, several versions of Nathaniel can biologically be older or younger while existing simultaneously. Iron Lad is a teenage version of Nathaniel. Immortus is traditionally presented as a future incarnation or a divergent older self. Because time travel creates branches and paradoxes, these identities are not simply one man moving through a perfectly consistent sequence. Marvel has repeatedly rewritten and complicated which Kang becomes which identity, and whether one version diverged from another. They remain connected through Nathaniel Richards, but they don't always share one uninterrupted personal timeline. For ordinary people, age is measured by time. For Kang, age is measured by the path through time taken by the version currently standing in front of you. One man, many lives. Most villains have an identity crisis. Kang turned this into an entire multiverse. Some were names Nathaniel adopted at different stages of his life. Others emerged through divergent timelines. Some versions became effectively independent people after temporal events split their histories. And certain names, especially Scarlet Centurion, have also been used by other characters, including Kang's son, Marcus. Think of Kang's identity as a branching skill tree in a video game. Every major decision can open a new route, but in Kang's case, those alternate routes may continue existing after the decision is made. Instead of one future replacing another, time travel can generate another Nathaniel Richards, with his own memories, goals, and eventual identity. One path leads to Rama-Tut, the young Nathaniel who travels to ancient Egypt and rules as a pharaoh through futuristic technology. Another leads to the Scarlet Centurion identity, influenced partly by Nathaniel's encounter with Dr. Doom. The most famous path becomes Kang the Conqueror, who fully embraces warfare, empire building, and domination across history. Then things become even stranger. Iron Lad is a teenage Nathaniel who sees the monster he's expected to become and rejects that destiny. Rather than accepting Kang's future, he travels into the past, gathers the young Avengers, and tries to stop his older self. At the opposite end stands Immortus, traditionally presented as an older future version who's abandoned direct conquest in favor of manipulating history from limbo. Immortus becomes an agent of the Timekeepers, although his relationship with them is filled with manipulation, rebellion, and divergent versions of himself. This is where Kang's anatomy stops being only physical and becomes temporal. A human body contains different organs performing different jobs. Kang's branching history almost operates in a similar way. Rama-Tut represents his attempt to dominate the past. Kang wages war across multiple eras. Iron Lad represents the possibility of choosing something better. Immortus manipulates history from its margins. Victor Timely quietly embeds Kang's influence into technological development. They're separate identities and in some cases separate temporal beings, but they remain branches originating from Nathaniel Richards. That's what makes Kang terrifying. You're rarely fighting just one man. You're fighting a life that refuses to remain inside one timeline. The Rama-Tut effect. Rama-Tut was not a new species or magically transformed body. He was Nathaniel Richards using technology to dominate a civilization that could not understand it. Becoming Rama-Tut did not grant Kang a new anatomy. Nathaniel didn't suddenly unlock magical powers or evolve into a divine being. He remained the same human time traveler from Earth 6311. The major change was the historical period surrounding him. Kang did not become powerful because ancient Egypt physically strengthened him. He became powerful because someone from the 31st century had entered a civilization with no possible understanding of his time machine, weapons, robots, medicine, or mind control technology. Imagine giving an aircraft, energy weapon, or advanced computer to somebody living thousands of years ago. Advantage Nathaniel exploited. Using a sphinx-shaped time machine and advanced technology, he established himself as Pharaoh Rama-Tut and enslaved the population. However, it is slightly misleading to say the Egyptians simply worshipped him because of misunderstanding. Rama-Tut maintained his rule through coercion, weapons, mind control, and political domination. His technology gave him the appearance and authority of a god, but he was still a tyrant imposing himself on the people around him. That's one of the interesting things about Kang. He doesn't always have to transform himself. Sometimes he merely changes his location in history. Place Nathaniel in ancient Egypt with future technology and he becomes Rama-Tut. Give him armor inspired by Dr. Doom and he becomes the Scarlet Centurion. Let him build an empire across time and he becomes Kang the Conqueror. Allow one future version to grow older and become entangled with the Timekeepers, and Immortus emerges. The same foundational DNA and intellect can therefore produce several identities. But because temporal divergences create independent branches, they don't always remain the exact same continuous person. Rama-Tut was not merely Kang wearing Egyptian clothes. He was an important stage or branch in the development of Nathaniel's belief that superior technology entitled him to rule everybody else born before him. Kang did not need a different body to become someone else. He needed a different century and another opportunity to impose his will. The Immortus evolution. At what point does an older version of you stop being you? That's the question Immortus forces us to ask. Immortus is connected to Nathaniel Richards and is traditionally presented as Kang's future incarnation, but Marvel's time travel stories have created divergences in which Kang and Immortus can become independent versions rather than one inevitably transforming into the other. Immortus was born from the same life, but after centuries of temporal conflict, he barely behaved like the conqueror he had once been. Kang's life is driven by domination. Immortus has already experienced the consequences of those wars. Rather than charging openly into battle and declaring himself ruler, he usually operates through manipulation, temporal strategy, and control from limbo. The Timekeepers appointed Immortus to address anomalies caused by Kang and to guide history towards outcomes they desired. He became known as the Custodian of Time and ruled from limbo, a dimension outside ordinary time. However, calling him a simple manager of timelines would make him sound more benevolent than he is. Immortus has manipulated the Avengers, attempted to control Wanda Maximoff, interfered with alternate realities, and served plans that could eliminate entire timelines. He did not abandon conquest because he became morally enlightened. He replaced direct conquest with subtler forms of control. That is one of the biggest pivots in Nathaniel Richards' history. Physically, Immortus remains human. Marvel has not established that time travel biologically transformed him into a new species. But mentally, he's been shaped by centuries of seeing history from outside the viewpoint of ordinary people. Imagine watching civilizations rise, collapse, and repeat the same mistakes. Eventually, you might stop thinking in days or years and start thinking in centuries and branching realities. At that point, individuals become pieces in larger patterns. That's why Immortus feels like a different kind of Nathaniel. His body remains human, but his perspective has been altered by prolonged exposure to temporal conflict, limbo, the Timekeepers, and countless possible histories. The ambitious conqueror did not disappear entirely. He evolved into somebody who could treat universes like pieces on a chessboard. So, was Immortus simply an old Kang? Originally, that was the basic idea. But because of temporal divergence, Marvel has also depicted Kang and Immortus as separate incarnations, capable of opposing one another. Immortus represents one possible endpoint for Nathaniel Richards rather than a guaranteed destination every Kang must reach. If Kang weaponizes history, Immortus attempted to administer and manipulate it. Iron Lad's choice. Imagine discovering that you're destined to become one of the greatest villains in Marvel history and responding, "Nah, I'm not doing all that." That was Iron Lad. Iron Lad was not Kang's son, clone, or unrelated multiversal imitator. He was a teenage Nathaniel Richards whose future self arrived at a critical moment in his life. The 16-year-old Nathaniel was a robotic student on Earth 6311. When bullies attacked him and placed his life in danger, Kang rescued his younger self and gave him advanced neurokinetic armor. Kang then showed Nathaniel the future in which he would become the Conqueror. Kang expected young Nathaniel to be impressed. The plan backfired. Nathaniel was horrified by the wars, deaths, and tyranny associated with his future, so he took the armor, escaped into the past, and attempted to prevent himself from becoming Kang. After discovering that the Avengers had disbanded, he used information connected with the Vision's Avengers failsafe program to assemble a new team. That group became the Young Avengers. This is why Iron Lad changes the way we understand Kang. Rama-Tut, Scarlet Centurion, Kang, and Immortus can look like different expressions of one continuing obsession with control. Iron Lad proves that Nathaniel was not born evil. There was no biological conqueror gene forcing him towards dictatorship. His DNA did not require him to become Kang. The transformation resulted from experiences, choices, trauma, pride, ambition, and his refusal to accept limits. Iron Lad represents the version who sees these possibilities and tries to choose something else. But his story is also tragic. Iron Lad forms the Young Avengers and develops strong emotional ties, particularly with Cassie Lang. During the confrontation with Kang, Iron Lad kills his older self. However, Kang's death causes severe damage to the timeline. Nathaniel eventually concedes that he must return to his own era and continue along the path towards becoming Kang to restore history. That doesn't mean every decision was predetermined. It means the timeline around Iron Lad had already become dependent on Kang's existence. Iron Lad demonstrates that Nathaniel can make better choices, but it also shows how difficult it is to escape a future after time travel has woven that future into countless historical events. Nathaniel Richards was not mutated by radiation or cosmic energy. He was transformed by possibility. Most people imagine one future. Nathaniel encountered dozens. Some versions became heroes, some became tyrants, some became temporal administrators, others became nightmares. Every one of those futures could become real in a branching timeline. That's why Kang's anatomy is multiversal rather than merely physical. His body's not the only thing consistently evolving. His future is as well. Each major divergence can produce another Nathaniel Richards. It's like watching one cell split into 2, then 4, then 8, until an organism emerges from different versions of the same original life. Iron Lad proves that the organism was never morally uniform. At least one branch refused to become the monster, and that's why Kang can never completely erase what Iron Lad represents. No matter how many lifetimes Kang conquers, Iron Lad remains proof that Nathaniel Richards could have chosen to become better. Galaxy Brain. Imagine trying to outsmart somebody who may have studied your next moves centuries before you were born. This is the kind of menace Kang represents. His deadliest weapon is not necessarily his armor, energy weapons, or time machine. It's his mind. Nathaniel Richards is one of Marvel's most formidable strategists. But what truly separates him from an ordinary military genius is his access to history. You and I think in days or weeks. When planning ahead, we may think in years. Kang can plan using events distributed across centuries. When he looks at a battle, he's not limited to asking, how do I win this fight? He can ask, how can I change the circumstances that created this conflict? He may position weapons in an earlier era, recruit soldiers from a future civilization, study an enemy's eventual descendants, or retreat to another time period before returning with a new strategy. That makes him feel less like an ordinary soldier and more like a historian armed with direct access to events he's studied. However, Kang's not literally omniscient. He does not automatically know every future, and Marvel's timelines are not completely predetermined. His plans frequently fail because events change, heroes act unpredictably, variants interfere, or Kang's own arrogance causes him to underestimate people. He also cannot continuously process every timeline and possible future at once. That description works as a metaphor for his strategic thinking, not a literal neurological ability established by Marvel. After spending much of his life traveling through time, confronting variants, surviving paradoxes, and watching civilizations rise and fall, Nathaniel no longer thinks about history in a straightforward way. Past, present, and future become locations he can visit rather than completely separate categories. That's why Kang often appears several moves ahead. Sometimes he's already observed a future result. Sometimes he possesses historical records of the people he's fighting. Sometimes the event being experienced by the Avengers has already happened from Kang's personal perspective. It can feel as though his brain is running hundreds of tabs simultaneously. But the more accurate explanation is that he combines exceptional intelligence with historical knowledge, temporal transportation, predictive planning, and access to alternate outcomes. If one plan fails, another Kang may be attempting something else in another timeline. You're not merely fighting Kang's body or technology, you're fighting a strategist who treats history as one enormous battlefield. Kang didn't merely think outside the box, he acquired a time machine and traveled to the century before that box was built. Victor Timely's reset. What if conquering history wasn't enough, so you quietly embedded yourself into its technological development? That was Victor Timely's strategy. Out of Kang's many identities, Victor Timely may be the most underrated. Not because he was the strongest or flashiest, but because he demonstrated that Nathaniel did not always need armies and public declarations to influence the future. Sometimes the smarter move was to enter history quietly and allow decades of technological development to perform the conquest for it. After his defeat in Avengers number 8, one divergent Kang traveled to January 1st, 1901, adopted the identity Victor Timely, and founded the town of Timely, Wisconsin. On the surface, he appeared to be an inventor, industrialist, businessman, and local benefactor. Behind the scenes, he introduced selected technological ideas centuries before their proper development. However, it would be an exaggeration to say Victor Timely personally created every major technological advancement leading to Kang's future. He planted inventions, influenced scientists, established timely industries, and manipulated technological history. But he didn't single-handedly write all of civilization's software. One of the most important people influenced by Timely's work was Phineas Horton, the inventor of the original android Human Torch. That connection allowed Kang's future technology to leave traces inside the heroic age of Marvel history. Victor Timely also maintained his identity across generations. As he appeared to age, Nathaniel withdrew from public life and returned as Victor Timely Jr. Later, he presented himself as Victor Timely III. To the outside world, the Timely family appeared to be a technological dynasty, passing knowledge from father to son. In reality, the identities were used by the same temporally displaced Kang or by versions connected with his plan. That's what makes Victor Timely important to Kang's anatomy. Throughout this discussion, we've seen Kang change armor, names, centuries, and timelines. Victor Timely took that principle further. Instead of rebuilding his body, he rebuilt his position in history. He created layers of identity around himself until the original Nathaniel became difficult to locate. That makes Victor Timely feel less like an ordinary alter ego and more like a historical institution. Every supposed descendant extended the disguise. Every invention increased Kang's influence. Every passing generation made the Timely name appear more legitimate. Victor Timely proved that Kang's greatest invention was not necessarily another weapon or time machine. It was a method of making one man's influence appear to reproduce through history. Timeline infection. Every time Kang travels through time, there's a possibility that his actions will create a new divergence. Most time travelers leave footprints. Kang frequently leaves alternate versions of himself. The more Nathaniel Richards interferes with historical events, changes decisions, encounters his younger self, and travels into alternate futures, the more complicated his personal timeline becomes. However, time travel does not automatically produce a new Kang every time he appears. A temporal journey may preserve one continuous Nathaniel, alter an existing branch, generate a divergence, or create a separate reality depending on the rules operating in that particular story. Still, Kang's constant interference has produced an extraordinary number of counterparts. Some become conquerors, some become pharaohs, some manipulate events from limbo. Some reject their destiny, others develop into versions with entirely different goals. All originate from Nathaniel Richards, or from timelines built around his identity. That is how Marvel eventually arrived at groups such as the Council of Kangs. The Council brought together versions of Kang from different realities and timelines, but cooperation among Kangs was never stable. Every member possessed the same pride, ambition, and belief in his own superiority. The Council was eventually turned upon other variants, eliminating counterparts until surviving Kangs also began killing one another. One Kang ultimately emerged with the memories of numerous counterparts, although absorbing that accumulated temporal experience temporarily damaged his sanity. Marvel later introduced the Council of Cross-Time Kangs, which included even stranger beings and counterparts connected to the Kang identity. Imagine walking into a room where nearly everybody is another version of you, but each version has made different decisions, built a separate empire, and believes that he's the only one who deserves to survive. That's a multiversal nightmare. The most frightening part is that Kang variants are often less interested in forming a peaceful community than in proving which Kang is authentic or superior. They just erase one another, manipulate one another, and attempt to absorb or replace rival histories. Kang therefore stops functioning as one villain and begins resembling a temporal infestation. Once Nathaniel Richards interferes with enough of history, the timeline doesn't merely remember him. It may preserve several contradictory versions of him simultaneously. Just human? The craziest thing about Kang is that after everything we've discussed, he remains fundamentally human. He has no mutant gene, innate cosmic power, or magical destiny. Strip away the armor and titles, and underneath them is Nathaniel Richards, a man who refused to accept ordinary human limitation. But that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Many Marvel villains become dangerous because they're born or transformed into something different. Kang becomes dangerous because he repeatedly chooses to extend himself through knowledge, technology, armies, identities, and time travel. He turned future science into weapons. He turned history into a battlefield. He turned alternate possibilities into rival selves. He transformed his own identity into something capable of surviving across centuries. By the end of the journey, Kang's not merely one person. His anatomy does not stop at his skin. It stretches into his armor, time machine, temporal fortresses, armies, variants, false identities, and strategies distributed across history. That is why fighting Kang rarely feels like fighting one man. It can feel like fighting an entire civilization organized around one person's ambition. But it would be an exaggeration to say he conquered the entire multiverse. Kang has conquered planets, empires, eras, and even Earth during the Kang dynasty. He's threatened timelines and alternate realities, but he's also been defeated repeatedly and has never established permanent domination over the whole Marvel multiverse. Kang did not become dangerous because he stopped being human. He became dangerous because he discovered ways to extend one human life across technology and time. And honestly, that could be more unsettling than another cosmic monster. Movie Kang. So did the MCU understand what made Kang frightening? Honestly, yes and no. The MCU introduced several characters connected with Kang's multiversal concept. Loki Season 1 presented He Who Remains, a variant who ended a multiversal conflict among his counterparts and created the system controlling the sacred timeline. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, introduced a conquering Kang exiled to the quantum realm. The film depicted him as a technologically empowered human who could dominate a civilization through intelligence, armor, energy weapons, and knowledge of the multiverse. It also teased the Council of Kangs during its mid-credits sequence. Loki Season 2 introduced Victor Timely, though the MCU version differs significantly from that comic character. In the series, Timely is a 19th century inventor whose life is deliberately influenced by Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes. He does not secretly live through several generations as his own descendants in the way the comic version did. The MCU understood that Kang's primary threat was not simply physical strength. He was dangerous because of his variants, advanced technology, the knowledge of events beyond one timeline. But Quantumania also reduced much of the conflict to a relatively conventional physical confrontation. The comic version of Kang is rarely frightening because he can merely throw stronger punch. He's frightening because defeating one incarnation may not eliminate the plans, divergent histories, or counterparts connected with him. However, the MCU's direction has changed since Quantumania and Loki. Marvel Studios originally announced an Avengers film titled Avengers: The Kang Dynasty. That project was later replaced by Avengers: Doomsday, with Doctor Doom positioned as the announced central villain. Marvel's official schedule currently lists Avengers: Doomsday for December 18th, 2026, followed by Avengers: Secret Wars on December 17th, 2027. As of July 2026, Marvel has not officially announced how or whether the unresolved Council of Kang storyline will continue. So it would no longer be accurate to discuss Kang as though he's unquestionably the MCU's confirmed central villain moving forward. The films and series established the foundations of his multiversal threat, but the future of those variants within the MCU remains unclear. At the end of the day, Kang was never intended to be Marvel's physically strongest villain. He's the man who weaponized time itself, and that represents an entirely different kind of danger. Kang the Conqueror did not merely have a body, he had an entire timeline. But underneath all the futuristic armor, he remained Nathaniel Richards, a human who was not born with outrageous powers or god-tier destiny. Instead, he continued upgrading himself until technology felt like a part of his anatomy. Time travel rewrote his development, and his identities became a multiversal family tree. Rama-Tut, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus, Iron Lad, and Victor Timely were not simply random costumes. They were stages, identities, and divergent branches connected with the same extraordinary life. And that's what makes Kang so unsettling. He didn't merely invade history, he discovered how to embed different versions of himself inside it. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know which Marvel anatomy you want us to explore next. You guys have a great day.